Well, thanks for joining us for today's webinar. It's going to be Agilon and ADVIZOR talking about how we've ganged up to create a unique solution for fundraising analytics. I'm Doug Cogswell. I'm the President and CEO of ADVIZOR Solutions. We're a business analytics and discovery company, and we've been in the fundraising sector for about the last 10 years. I'm here with Dave Best. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Doug. Glad to be here. I'm President and CEO of Agilon. We develop and market the technology platform Agilon's One for all-encompassing profiles and donor management.
And we figured we better bring someone that actually uses this stuff onto the webinar. So I've got Kay Murphy. Hi, Kay.
Hey, Doug. I'm Kay Murphy. I'm Senior Director of Advancement Services for East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina.
And they're a client of both ADVIZOR and Agilon, so they're a good one to talk about what you can do when you put the pieces together. So high level, we're talking about data acquisition and management, which is what CRM systems like Agilon do, and then using that data into a tool like ADVIZOR's where you could do data discovery and analysis with the goal of empowering and enabling end-user teams in major giving, annual giving, member relations, overall campaign management to understand what's actually going on in the data so they can make better and more informed decisions. And it loops back because sometimes that also informs and helps you understand what should actually go in the CRM and or other systems. So Dave's first going to talk a bit about what he's doing with Agilon, which is kind of some unique things on structuring data and laying out. We'll then talk about what we can do with the data. And what we're working on is combining these things so to the extent there's structured, consistent data in the CRM system, we can create templated solutions that can go in really rapidly and help add value. And we'll take you through 2 or 3 of those as time permits. So Dave, why don't you talk a bit about what you guys are doing with the CRM side of this?
The Agilon One platform is all-encompassing and designed to bring together everything you do with your donors, your students, your parents, all your constituents. And I won't walk through this diagram in detail, but you can see all the various components that are brought together into the single database, everything from campaign and major gift through all of your stewardship and contributions management, alumni memberships, events, outreach and communications, marketing, and then the back-end evaluation and key indicators, dashboards, and those sort of things, which makes it a prime database for data mining, if you will, and the analytics that ADVIZOR brings to this. And these tools are so exciting. We wanted to bring and share them with you today and use the example that East Carolina has put together for managing this with the Agilon One database. And with that, we'll get on.
Yeah, and the thing is when companies like ours try to do analytics, we're trying to look pretty broadly. So to the extent there's any information that relates to how an alum or a prospect, a donor, a patient may relate to the institution, the better, and we can then synthesize that and create metrics out of it. So in higher education, it's alumni events, it's newsletter click-throughs, it's all of that kind of stuff adds to the core stuff about the people, the biographical information. And on the patient side, it's the patient details about what encounters they've had, how many, all of that's also helpful because that's all stuff that helps you understand the attachment or engagement of the prospect along with the biographical, contextual stuff about who they are. And that's what we like about this. It's a complete set of information, and they've done a good job of structuring the schema in the table. So when we go to grab it, it's much more consistent than many of the layouts we end up working with. Did I say that well, Dave?
I think you summed it up.
So we're going to now dive in. What do you do with the front end? So we are a software company, and we have software and services that our mission and vision is how to transform fundraisers to consume and interact with the data that they have in the CRM and or other systems. And often sometimes stuff ends up in spreadsheets and text files and all that, with the goal of empowering the fund users so that they can do their own discovery and analysis without having to go back to IT or other outside resources, consultants and whatnot to do the work. So we're trying to infuse this into the organization. We try to have easy-to-use software. Basically, our view is if you can use Excel, you ought to be able to use ADVIZOR. We load a lot more data and do different things with it, but that's the goal. We have a set of solution templates. We have business consultants So one of the things that happens is trying to understand what data is actually there and how to then synthesize it and blend it into something useful is sort of beyond software. It's actually contextual about understanding the data. So we're pretty good at doing that, and we help our clients construct something that's user-friendly and useful. Try to be self-service, quick turnaround, easy to implement. Typically, we can get some of the stuff you'll see up and running in 4 to 8 weeks from start to finish. Sometimes it takes longer. There could be discussions on how to calculate giving or what counts as a contact. All that can start slowing it up, but we get into all of that. We use existing data. We access, blend, synthesize what's there. We load from the CRM system like Agilon and other sources because, as I said, often there's stuff that's just not in the system. It might be newsletter click-throughs just got downloaded from the mail services in a text file, or it might be the campaign goals the management wants to put in a spreadsheet. Well, we can grab that and then blend it in with what's in the CRM system. We can run on-premise or in the cloud. That's either way is fine. So, and these kinds of analytic systems, and what we're working with Agilon, cover a wide range of end users. We'll show some examples in a minute, but and then Kay and Lisa can come in and talk about what they're doing at East Carolina. But runs from the top. VP, deans, provosts, heads of the fundraising team, looking at campaign results, snapshots, and scorecards, trying to get answers to questions, more of a dashboard. It's also the data is really useful in leadership giving for both management and field officers, trying to understand if you have a pool of assigned prospects, who's managing it well, are people moving it through stages, asking at the right levels, all of that, and trying to understand patterns to draw out best practices and coaching tips. And we did a webinar on this back in September, which we'll come back to later if you want to see more. You can also push this out to field officers, so the frontline staff can, they're going to, somebody's going to New York, and they want to find, the top-rated prospects who have not been visited in the last 18 months and also have not given in the last 2 years. Here's my list of 20. Those are my, prime targets to call when I'm up there. Annual giving, we'll do an example of this. It's a lot about retaining current donors, acquiring non-donors, reacquiring lapsed donors, and looking at which appeals and messaging work. And we also did a webinar on this back in October, November timeframe. That's a much more complete rundown than we'll get today. A lot of work is taking the data for prospect research, where you're trying to understand how does all this stuff fit together, event participation, consistency of giving, biographical information, and trying to call out of that who are the best prospects to staff, assign a campaign target to, and all of that. And then lastly, at the bottom of this, these kinds of tools for somebody who's really analytical, you can build and run predictive models and do a lot of causal factor analysis, some fairly hardcore analytics out of the data that's in the CRM system. So the point here is what we and anything like this does is it runs the gamut from kind of high level, more of a view scorecard and some pretty hardcore analytics. And I'm going to just drive into one for 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and have Kay talk about some of the experiences with this. Then we'll go to a second one and do the same. So I'm going to look at something prospect research might use. We call this a project. I'm clicking on a link. It opens in a browser. Our start time on something like this is usually 10 to 20 seconds, and we're loading a full set of the CRM system tables. In this case, it's I think this one's loading 25, and it's loading some other data as well. In our format, as we come up in a project with pages, the pages are the themes of the workflow. So this is about finding prospects. So the first page is a list. It says I've got 94,000 total. I'm looking at roughly 55,000. I've ruled some out. It looks like I've got just the rated prospects showing here. And here's a list of them all from the one that gave the most in the bottom of the list. There's a bunch of small and at the very bottom non-donors. So I've got the list of the whole group here I can look at. I have this panel I'm going to hide which describes what I'm looking at. So an example of this is, and this has attachment scores, it has rating, has a bunch of information. Let's say I want to find, I'm working my campaign. Do I have any high-rated prospects who are also really well engaged who aren't staffed? And if so, where are they? Because my VP is going to the Bay Area, then she's going down to Florida, and let's find the right people to set up a dinner with. So I'd use this, I click on the ratings page. So it's part of the workflow. This has stuff on capacity rating, attachment scores, the same list simplified, and then a count of who I'm looking at. And the capacity rating can be a synthesized research rating, can be target scores, wealth engine scores. It can be, we can bring in wealthy zip codes. There's a variety of ways of getting this. That's another discussion. But let's just say, however we did it, we were able to combine these, and we find that there's the top rating 50 million or more. There's 166 people, and they're colored red, so they're highlighted. And then it runs down. This down here, there's like 19,000 people who are rated $25,000 to $50,000. So let's say we wanted to find everybody who's rated $500,000 or up to start that scenario. So I could just select. This is all interactive. I'm selecting everybody in these 5 bars, which is 500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 50, and 50 plus, and that's 6,306 people. It shows over here that in the disconnected attachment group, we'll see what this is in a minute, but the disconnected are basically people who graduated and fled. They did not come to events, they don't give, they haven't been on any committees, they probably didn't play student sports. And so that's my least connected group. 2357 of the really high rated are disconnected, but at the top you can see the little brush up. It's only 8.8% of all the disconnected. So there's a lot of them, but it's a small percent roughly. If I go to the owners, these are the people that graduated, give consistently, been on committee. So we're using all of this data in the CRM system to create this composite score and show it like this. And people get it. They get, these are owners, and there's 162 of the really high capacity, or 28% of the owners are high capacity. And what about the highly engaged? It's 1365 or 22%. So just at this level, I'm seeing the good news is my high capacity people tend to make up a higher concentration of my more highly attached or engaged people. So let's just drop in. I can get rid of the gray, zoom in on the high capacity. Let's grab the highly engaged owners, get rid of everybody else. I've now got 1,527 people who are both high capacity and highly engaged owners, and here's a list of them. Some top donors, they go to the bottom of the list, it runs down to smaller donors. So the scenario was, we want to find high capacity, highly attached or engaged people who aren't staffed. So my logic or my workflow is I click on the staffing page. This is to show the staffing assignments is currently for these people. Let's zoom in a little bit. Looks like 269 of them don't have a staff assigned. Megan's got 116, Megan Buliford. You can see by the color, the red are the really high rated. This would be the 500,000 to $1 million. She's got mostly 500,000 to $1 million. It jumps down here that looks like Dan Law has 67, but he's got the really, really high capacity, highly engaged people. So obviously we got to look at his portfolio. He's got the cream of the crop. He's probably presumably one of my top field officers. But the story was we want these guys. So I click this. Here's my 269. I go to map. Where are they? Those 269 are a bunch in the Northeast. Boston area looks like I've got some out here in Weston, someone down here in Wellesley. But my VP is she's going to the Bay Area next week. Let's grab the Bay Area, get rid of everybody else. I now can go back to my first page. And here's the list of the 24 people who live in the Bay Area, aren't staffed, high capacity, and also highly engaged owners. And I want this list out of here, so I go to the bottom. I'm running on a browser, which could be anywhere. Export the data down to Excel, and kind of here I've got the list out of here in Excel, which I can give to who's ever managing this thing and say, hey, let's set up a dinner with these people. So the last thing I'm going to do, then I'm going to stop on this, is somebody's going to ask, how are these people engaged? What makes them highly engaged? What can I do to help cultivate them even further? So we go to this page where it's the detail on the engagement. And what we've done is run a model that updates every day off the data. Looks like David Prado is the owner. And these are this model scores. We bin them into these groups. These people are all highly engaged. And these are the factors that make up engagement or attachment. We use the word interchangeably. Numbers of volunteer committee participations had a high degree of influence. And it looks like this whole group, other than Adrian, have not been on a volunteer committee. Numbers of the years of the last 5 years they've made a gift, all of them pretty consistent. The 6 to 10 behind the 5 years back, consistently coming to reunions all the time, number played sports, student activities. So the thing I can influence looking at this dinner is let's get these guys on a really good volunteer committee. And, that would be the target for the dinner, because if they do, they're more likely to be more engaged and they're more likely to give at their potential. And I can sort of see the total giving. There's a six-figure donor, but they're just way under their capacity for all of them. I could do some more work if I really want to look at their giving history over time. Got one big donor. What about the rest of them? Just look at the ones without the big donor. Yeah, they've been given, but they've actually fallen off recently. They gave a spike back in 2010 to 12. Okay, well, that's not the best. I'd like to get that up. I can look at their affiliation. There's 24. Did they play sports? A couple football. I'm trying to see, can I group them somehow? Fraternity, sorority, there's a group in there. I can drill down on this. Let's see underneath. Just looking for patterns. A couple in the outing club. Grab them. So I've grabbed the 2 out of the 24 in the outing club. Looks like one played football, one did rugby. What's their affiliation? So here's the gray is the class years of the other 22. The green are the ones I selected. So it looks like I've got 2 people. Class affiliation of 50, 51, 52. Looks like both undergrads. One was also law, which is why the extra year. Alums. So these guys might know each other. They live in the same area. They were the same class years. They were in activities together. So as I do my seating for my dinner, I might try to get these 2 guys together with somebody else who's in that same sphere of influence, who may be one of my large donors, completely all-in people. So that's a great example of how we can take the data and make it easy to work with. And I'm going to flip to K for a second, because our concept here is that doing that back and forth with the database is hard. You might relate back kind of how your teams use this kind of a thing.
I will. This project was very beneficial to us this year. We have school-based fundraisers. We also have screened our database for wealth, and so we had all of that data, and so we were trying to build portfolios for some new fundraisers. And so we were able to use this project, to drill down and see, their wealth score and what school they were in, any possible affiliation with the university. So it was very, very beneficial in helping build those portfolios this year using ADVIZOR.
Do you have any stats on how it shortened or made it easier? Like I know in some cases I've heard, it used to take some amount of time to do it. Now you can do it interactively in a meeting. Do you have examples like that or stories?
You mean as far as getting the data or building the portfolios, or what are you asking me?
Sort of the process of just doing that slicing and dicing to get a list for a portfolio, like before and after, because kind of one of our things we say is it kills the cycle of pain and creates this much more collaborative environment. Sure, because in the past when the manager of the fundraisers would request a report, he or she may not know exactly the data that they wanted, and then they would get the report, and then they'd have to come back, and we'd have to redo it, and we had so many requests, and so this makes it much easier for the person that is asking for the data to look at it themselves. They get a visual of it, and it makes it easier for them. So it's really saved us a lot of time as far as we only had 1.5 report writers, and so they just didn't have a lot of time to spend pulling these reports and repulling them and repulling them. So it's been very beneficial. You just described like this cycle of pain concept right up here. It's exactly the kind of thing we see a lot. And the other form of it, comment if you had any of this, where you try to download inherently complex multi-dimensional data into Excel, write some macros and try to do it there. Have you had any, has that happened, or has it been mainly going back to advancement services and so forth to get custom pulls? Yes. Yes. Good answer. Very complex. They would come back, and we'd have, our report writers would get frustrated. They'd have to redo it, and it's not, everyone that's in this field knows it's just not the matter of pressing a button and getting the data. So you have to look at it in multiple ways and pull from different tables when you're using some other form of tool extraction. But ADVIZOR, you just click and choose. It really does make it a lot easier. And the thing that this whole shadow data system point at the bottom, we often find too is when you pull it into Excel, or you have a consulting company, you go out and like run these kind of scores, like especially attachment, you have these static scores. And the fact of the matter is, last weekend, some of your alums have come to a reunion, or they've been to an event, or they made a gift, so their engagement or attachment, it's dynamic and it's changing. So the beauty of this is it's embedded in, so it loads the Agilon or the other CRM system data every day and recalculates those scores. And if somebody had that, came to the reunion, made a gift, jumped on a committee, they might bump up from disconnected to engaged. And then now they're in a different category because their whole profile with the university's changed. Or it could be the same thing on the healthcare side where they come in for a set of treatments that are much more connecting. That'll on Monday morning, that's gonna, when the data loads after the weekend, you're gonna see that. So that's this whole concept of making it live, interactive with the CRM system, not some shadow system that's offloading and running separately and it gets stagnant.
Right.
So yeah, that was, I'm going to just keep, because we'll come back at this again. We talked about prospect identification. I just want to show a quick annual giving example. I'm going to do a tactical one. There's a whole webinar on using this more strategically. But I'm going to open this. It's largely the same data, so one of the things I want to show is, when we purpose this for an annual giving team, it needs to have the data and the look and the layout for an annual giving team. It might be largely the same data, but they're doing different things with it. The same thing you see a campaign dashboard in a few minutes. Largely the same data, but the look and feel will be different. So again, you've got a 10, 20 second load. We're loading here, I think, 100,000 total entities and a couple million rows of appeals. This is going to be more of a traditional dashboard, scorecard look on the first page. And so it's an overview of the program. And it's, this is a program summary. I'm going to just focus on this page, but it's got breakdowns of trends by segment, details on appeals, which ones are working, which ones aren't. Touch points, because you actually want to make sure people are getting connected with the right messaging at appropriate frequency. List of people, then giving to the annual fund, and same like the others, got stuff on the people, where they live, affiliation, so you can drill into the people. And it's got this panel on the left which describes it. So this, what I'm going to do is just summarize the page. It's got total participation across time because you want to track this, and this is a mature program where it's been really good at like 47, 48%. It started in 12, it was low, but it came back up. A slight decline recently. 16 is still in progress. And we're looking at giving this year versus last year by month. The blue is this year, the red is last year, so we're doing pretty good. Although it looks like, pretend we're, I know it's not May. Some of us in Chicago wish it was. It's cold here, but pretend it's like late May. Looks like May and June, May's come a little weak, so we need to get some energy at the end of the year. Cumulative numbers, total number in the group, 56,000. Stats on the giving, we've got 22 million in so far. We sent 1.2 million appeals, a bunch of detail on that. And then here's the top donors so far this year in the annual giving. And then we'd like to look at current donors. These are people who gave, in this case, in 15 or some years before. These are people who gave sometime but not the last fiscal year, which right now would be 15. And these are people who never gave. And then these current donors break into for 5 consecutive years, 4, 3, 2. They were reacquired last year. They were a new donor last year. And the lapse, the same thing. You're looking at 1 year, 2 year lapse, and then the non-donors. So they break down. Then we look at giving seasonality. People who consistently give every year in October to December, March to June, summer, winter, are they variable? Have they given this year, yes or no, and their current first time this year? So this is a lot of the stats, but it's completely interactive. And let me just show you how you might use this. So it's the end of May. We're like running a little short right now. We have capacity for maybe 300 new prospects to go into the call center who are the right ones. Well, you might say, let's grab this group, the 3, 4, 5 year consecutive donors, sweep over them. There are 17,000 of them. That's good. They gave 100% in the 3 years, and 71% have given this year. Let's drop in on them. Some of them give consistently in October, December. Let's grab that group because hopefully they gave this year. Drop in on them. You can see that not all of them did. So let's grab the ones that haven't given. So this is the no to this year. So now I've quickly got a list of 325 people who have given 3, 4, or 5 or more years, always in October, December, but they missed it this year. And you can sort of see the 100% participation, 0 this year. So now I just go to the entity list, see what we got. Gaylord, Gayford, DeGood, alum, 85, 3-year consecutive. He's given a bunch, nothing this year, 50,000 the last 3 years. Go down the list. It got a lot of good stuff in here. 1,000, 500, 1,000, nothing. 3-year consecutive donor. 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, nothing. So this is a group I'd want to get right to the call center with some of this detail, because our analytics would show consistently that a short lapse donor is very much like a current donor. And if these guys lapsed more than 18, 24 months, they start looking a lot more like a non-donor. So it's really important to pick up on these things right away. And if I want this list out of here, again, like before, I just drop it off into Excel. And when I open this, I'll see it in Excel, and I'm good to go. Give this to my call center and say, let's hit it. So that's an example of annual giving. And Kay, I'd like you to just come back and talk about, I know you're just getting going in annual giving with this kind of a tool, but kind of what have you found, and are you getting towards some of the more strategic questions yet, or what's your vision there?
We are just beginning to use this project, Doug. I'm not the expert on that, but from the our annual fund director seems to think that it's going to be very beneficial and give them exactly what they need.
Yeah, and the thing that as we saw a very tactical example, but looking those pages with the appeals and the touch points, it lets you look at, am I growing my donor base? How good am I at retaining donors once I get them? Is my messaging connecting? Not all the appeals do. You can untangle, which ones work best with non-donors, which ones work best with reacquiring lapsed donors. You can get into, like, not all donors are the same. We've had a number of examples where a client will solicit an entire non-donor base with similar kind of appeals at a fairly low touch rate, and the yield is just not good. We've had great results. You can sometimes find that there's a third of that non-donor base will look a lot like the donors or the recently acquired non-donors. The third that's somewhere in between is a third that are probably highly unlikely to give. So if you focus on the third with the appeals that have actually worked and then increase the frequency, you generally can get the revenue way up with actually maybe sending less and cutting costs. So there's some great analysis that can be done with this in the annual giving side. One last I'm going to hit real quick. Campaign results. This is another different look, and we have a webinar coming up on this next week. So it's the first page is going to be more like that scorecard dashboard. Again, it's coming straight out of the CRM system data. It's just purposed in a different way. So hide the panel. We're looking at, the actual is the red, and the blue is the straight line. We're doing pretty good overall. Here's the actual totals by year, received, total, transactions. Some stats about what's come in, transactions by year, giving by year. So this is at one level is fine, but then like with the others, you can break it down. Here we're looking at by fund category. This could be school, it could be purpose, and then the fund categories have different funds underneath them. So these are things that are comprised into the funds. And you're looking at this against goal to date. This one's doing great, way over. There's a bunch of them that are under, maybe need some help. If I'm maybe in charge of faculty support, I can click it. So I want to go down a little bit. I see that faculty support has got 122 million in. The goal is 160, so that's why it's 76%, but it's uneven. Faculty research support's doing great. These things are not. You can actually see like this general faculty support, which is not doing particularly well. It's got 2.8 million in against 50, so it's 5.6%. May want to grab these lower ones. And the concept is I can go to the next page, so I'm drilling down really simply. Here's the details for that to date. Here I'm colored by, I'm looking at over time. I'm looking at who's participated, alums, blue, corporations, yellow, foundations. And here's how they've given to those 3 funds I was looking at. I might want to look at which alums, click alums, have given, the bigger gifts. Not many. I've got like one million donor, then I'm down into the 5-figure range. So it looks like if I was maybe running this, I need to go back and really get a focus on what's happening with my alums who I've targeted for this campaign fund, because it's pulling my faculty whole support thing below where it should be. That's an example of going from an overall view of a campaign macro down, being able to though quickly tap on an iPad or go into a browser and get down to say, hey, what's going on underneath this, and then raise and ask some questions. So we've seen 3 different examples. Okay, why don't you close by just talking through kind of back high level some of these questions and how you've made use of the combination of an Agilon ADVIZOR CRM analytics combination.
Okay, be happy to. I want to first start out by saying that we have 4 projects with ADVIZOR. We have the new project ID, prospect manager dashboard, staff activities, and the annual fund. The new project ID, well, let me just back up a little bit, what we were looking for when we did this. Because we had so many report requests and we're limited with our staff, we were looking for something that would help make it easier for the fundraisers and the administrators to look at the data and get their own reports. We also wanted to create something that would help the fundraisers manage their portfolios easier. So why did we choose ADVIZOR and Agilon? Agilon we've been with for quite a number of years. Since before they were Agilon. I think they were with Ruffalo Cody, and then they branched off to Agilon. But like I said, we have been with them, and one of our former vice chancellors was at a conference and saw a demonstration of ADVIZOR and came back and was all excited about it. And so we launched a project in 2010, our first project with them. We really didn't get a lot of people involved with it at that time, but just this last year we've really gotten big with it, so it's been a good experience. Our experience, as I said, has been very positive since we've enhanced our projects. It's visual and it's interactive, and I'm the type of person, I'm a hands-on visual person, and I can understand it better, and it seems to be that way for our fundraisers. We easily access our data. Our data is updated nightly on our server from Agilon to ADVIZOR. So it shares data real easy. We were able just to go into the tables and click and pull what we need. Our expectations.
Kay, you're reloading, I think, daily the data, so it's refreshing nightly off your Agilon data sets?
That is correct. That is correct. So it's just, next day we have up-to-date data.
And you're also, if I'm not mistaken, you're running this locally as an on-premise app. It's just Windows desktop and server. I don't think you're using, are you using our hosted offering, or you're all on site?
It's on site. Okay. On site. We have our own server.
Cool.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to bring that up because a lot of people are focusing on the cloud hosted thing, but many of our clients, like you, have just said it's, hey, just easier to put this on site with where the system and the data already is. It's not that hard to do. Right, right. So our expectations going forward that we'll be able to create perhaps more projects. We'll be able to create some reports that are made available for our fundraisers, so with a click of a button that they can have these reports available for them. We hope to make it web accessible. We're in the process of working on that now, so when they're out on the road, they will easily be able to access it. But we have all levels using it, from the Vice Chancellor down to report writer, the NGOs, the prospect management and research team uses it. So it's been very beneficial for all those areas. Words of wisdom, the most important thing is to get support from the top. Like I said, if you pull reports for them, they're going to let you do it for them, like we had done the old way.
So when we made this available, there was a little bit of hesitancy that they didn't want to learn something new. That, you know, but once they have found out that it's easily accessible and they can do it themselves, they have found the use, you know, the good use of it. Another word of advice, I would train more than one person on authoring, because that is very, very important that we know how to do it. We don't always depend on ADVIZOR to make the authoring changes for us. So I think that's a key. And in the beginning, try to get buy-in from all of your stakeholders. But another thing I'd like to bring up too is, and I'm going to preface this by saying nobody's paid me to say this, but customer service from both companies is tops. Both companies have always been very supportive and always willing to help whenever we needed something. Agilon, if their database didn't serve exactly what we needed, they were always willing to make changes. And also the ADVIZOR staff, they have always been very accommodating and helping us get things up and going.
Well, thanks for the platitudes. I appreciate that. I wanted to, when you were talking about the words of wisdom, I mean, what you just described is actually great advice for anybody putting in any form of an end-user system. And that whole, don't keep doing what you've been doing that is probably unproductive, is something that every time we interview people or do research on this, that comes out really high, that you've got to, like, call it different things, but cut off the old unproductive behaviors and get people using the new thing, and they will, unless you've done something wrong with it, they'll take to it, and it just makes life so much easier for everybody. Without that, yeah, the patterns, the habits continue. I think, thanks for saying that.
Yeah, what we found that we have to do is if they send in a report request, we have to say, let me come show you how you can get that data. And so that you need to do that. You have to tell the people that are doing the reports to say, no, let me show you another way that you can do it.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, and there's actually on our ADVIZOR website under resources webinars, there's a webinar we did last summer called Creating a Culture of Analytics, which takes the points Kay made and sort of builds on them. It'd be a great follow-on to that. I want to sort of come back to kind of where we started, which was, you know, the concept here is to take the data input system, also known as a CRM system, Agilon, and there are others, and then work with it to get the data in a form where we can do this quick discovery and analysis. It's light footprint, it updates daily, it's pushed out to a team, which then empowers, and it's somewhat technology, but it's also some of the things Kay said about how it gets rolled out, how people get presented it, how the old patterns get stopped. That creates this environment of end-user enablement that then becomes self-reinforcing, and you end up with just quicker and faster decisions. And I think the high level, what Agilon ADVIZOR, and we're glad East Carolina could come in and join us to add some texture to reality. That's what we're all about. We're trying to empower the end users because we can collect, manage data better, and present it in a more simple to slice and dice, get at mode that lets you do the kinds of things we did some highlights on a few minutes ago. Dave, do you have anything to add to that? Go ahead.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about our projects, how we use them?
Sure, that'd be great, because we're moving into Q&A and we've got some questions, but yeah, that'd be great for the group to hear.
Okay, I'll take just a minute and go over a couple of those. The new prospect ID, that our fundraisers use that to look at their portfolios, or even the prospects to see a geographical or by degree or by affinity or by past given history, just to kind of look at it and see where their prospects could be if they're going to California or New York or wherever. Find some prospective donors to go visit. Our prospect manager dashboard is used by the fundraisers. They use it to analyze their portfolios. They can look at it to see where they are at on their goals as far as face-to-face visits or proposals or proposed dollars raised. And then our staff activities is used by the supervisors they're evaluating their fundraisers. They can look at it and see how many face-to-face each fundraiser has made this year. They can look at it and say, okay, this person has 50 face-to-face at this point, but 10 of those are to the same prospect. So what's the point? And you can look at it and say, well, they don't even have a proposal out. So why are they visiting this one prospect so many times? So there's different ways you can look at that data that's very, very beneficial. And then, of course, our annual fund project, which our annual fund director is in charge of that. But that, like I said, that is up and coming, and we think that's going to be very helpful also.
Yeah, as you said that, I mean, I'm just thinking about the whole concept of when you talk about the major giving team and the portfolio, looking at the field officers, that data has like been there for a while. But we like to say, you know, this front end like this helps you untangle and see the stories in it with the context of it's not just how many visits, but yeah, they're visiting, you know, somebody 10 times, which means they haven't been visiting other people, and you actually want to see who have you not been visited, why this one person, and all those stories can come out, which, you know, generally get hidden in the data or are really hard to extract. And that's the contextual stuff that, like, the management in a meeting, you know, they know what they're trying to do, and it's like going to look like, why 10? You know, what about these other people? All that starts happening. And so, yeah, thank you. Hey, Dave, anything you want to add at this point? And we've got some questions that have come in. You've been silent for a bit,
really
which is unusual.
I think the empowerment of the end user is key, and the advisor tools are super good with that. The intuitive, interactive interface and the drill downs are amazing. And you're right, it does unlock a tremendous amount of information from these profiles.
Yeah. So I'm going to flip some questions around. We got one that came in, which I'm going to, it's an analytics question. It says, we're finding that constituents engagement can be to a specific school, such as some of the metrics can be misleading if it considers everybody together across a whole university. So absolutely. So those attachment or engagement scores were actually demo data out of, I think it's a small, more monolithic college. When we do this work, we're actually doing it right now at a large, well-known university where they have, I think it's 10 or 12 schools. We have to do the models separately, because if you take an engineering school, the things that influence, so the way you want to create the model is you want to look at a bunch of rated prospects, like maybe everybody rated over $25,000. You want to look at the people who have actually given at or above that amount. Then you have a bunch of these factors like events they've been to, student sports, all that stuff. And then the modeling will figure out for the engineering school, like sort of the class area or maybe the degree title or something really matters. And then, you know, they didn't play as many sports. I'm probably denigrating engineering students, but I actually was one, so I can do that. Whereas then if you go to the arts and sciences, it looks different. If you go to a business school, the set of factors are going to be different. So it's absolutely, yes, you have to, if the schools are not the same and people have different behaviors and different things influence it differently, you have to run the separate models. And the same thing, you have to split apart, obviously, alums from parents, from, you know, friends, because the parents are not going to be able to have the same experience as the alums. And you even need to look at alum undergraduate versus alum graduate, because they can have different experiences. Not to go crazy, but it's actually fairly easy to do. And in our world, what we would do is create a modeling score, an attachment score for each entity, but the actual math for the entity would depend on what their relationship was. So an entity with a preferred degree from the engineering school might have a, you know, might be highly engaged, but the scores created out of a different equation than the next one in the next row where it's an alum from the arts and sciences. So the beauty is, you know, the tools like ours, you can actually rip those models off really quick, and the scores are all footed from, you know, 0 to 1, so when you're done, they can be combined, and so you're going to have just different equations with different influences. But yes, you need to think that through, and the key is understanding, or just having a discussion, we like that word, about what's most likely to influence a behavior, and is it likely to be the same or different, and can they have the same experiences or different experiences? Those are the things that kind of determine whether it's, you know, one model or a handful of models. And we also don't like to get too complicated. So as I say that, 10 models is fine. We've seen cases where there's hundreds of models and it's too finely grained. So you have to, there's a balance there of all of that. And at the end, you're dealing with degrees of, direction. It's not, none of this modeling is precise. So that's the balance. Another question. Will we receive a recording? Yes, this is recorded, and we'll get back to you. Question for David. So Dave, sort of let me paraphrase this. Does Agilon do work equally in higher education and healthcare and not-for-profits? And what do you see as some of the differences between the three sectors?
We're principally in higher education with about 75 to 80%. We're also in some large healthcare and some larger membership organizations outside higher ed. And I think a lot of the things are very common. I would say with healthcare, the dealing with patients' data is unique. And I'd say outside of higher education, dealing with membership, various processes around the membership renewals and that can differ. But our platform really addresses all three of those major areas.
Yeah, I'd add on to that. So because we do work, we're doing more and more work in healthcare. And conceptually, a university does a bunch of fundraising stuff. They have alumni activities, they track giving, they do appeals. So does a fundraising foundation. They do basically the same thing. The university, the people have a prior engagement, which is bonding in the university, and they play sports. They go to events, the student activities, they take courses, they have get degrees. The analogy to that would be in healthcare. They go into the orthopedics thing, they have a procedure, they have an experience with a provider, they come back for a bunch of encounters. And if you think of it that way, we're actually doing the same thing. We're trying to create these scorings of engagement. And in the healthcare, we would generally split it to the actual provider part where they got healthcare, and then the follow-on foundation part where they were encouraged in some way. But the same kind of modeling and grouping, and with the legal releases on the healthcare patient encounters where they can now be provided to the fundraising unit, there's a lot of this work, and it's actually really exciting, and I think we've got some pioneering projects going there that are really, really helpful. So if any of you on this are the fundraising side, I know Dave's systems can handle and help bring the data together, and so it'd be a great discussion to have. A question for you, Kay. Were there any unpleasant experiences with the Agilon Advisor partnership? I don't like that question, but we'll ask it. It came in, so we'll ask it.
Well, I really can't think of any. I have a couple of ladies here that have been working with the new advisor project, so I'm going to ask them if they've had any bad experiences.
If they do, just mute the phone. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just learning the author and part of it, yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was bad. There's some things that are a little bit more difficult that have been challenging, but not anything I would call bad. That the companies have done. We've had good experiences from both companies and great support, so I can't say we've had any bad experience from either company at all.
I'd say from our perspective, do another flip on that question, is where, so we do this work, we generally write a statement of work and bound, how much time we fix price to deliver. Where we get our unpleasant experiences, and when sometimes we get into, there's a debate on the team about what constitutes a visit or how to record, what actually constitutes credit, whether it's a household or an entity and all of that. So we're fine with helping, or what's a current donor or a lapsed donor. And there can often be different viewpoints on the team. I think it's really actually critically important that the team resolve that at some point. And if we're part of resolving it, fine. But for us, that's okay. It's a bunch more stuff we weren't expecting.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that we had some issues with in the beginning. It was the definitions. And so once, we communicated and we were all on the same page, that worked itself out. So, that's not a bad thing. everybody doesn't have the same definitions. So,
Right.
but yeah, that was it.
And the thing just on the giving, I know there's all kinds of discussions about, hard, soft credit, all that stuff. What we really like, and some of our clients have done this, is the concept of households and entities. So the household is, the husband, the wife, the trust, or whatever, and you you sum the giving that way. So, if you click on any entity in the household, you're going to get the household, and the household is going to be sum of all the giving related to the household, which is the credit for each of the individuals. And when we put, this is more technical, when we put these tables, we load them out and we run them in memory, is how we run on either on a desktop PC where we author on a server that's either on-premise or in the cloud. We can have these one-to-many links between the one household and the several entities back to the gifts of the entities. So you can click the household, you get the 3 entities, you get all the gifts. You can grab then the husband, see what gifts he's made versus the wife and all of that. So our architecture is really well set for that. The challenge is, I know many have, the husband and wife is easier to put together. Getting the trusts included in the household is a little more challenging because it's usually or often not coded that well. But we really like that approach if you can do it, because it simplifies a lot of the hard, soft credit. If you obviously have the soft credit, you can't total the numbers because they don't foot out. If you have the hard credit and the wife made the gift and the husband doesn't see the credit, that's a problem too. So there's different ways around this, but it probably babbles a bit, but we like the house. Okay, have you guys thought, what have you done on that? Because that's something that comes up a bunch every time we have a conversation with a
household? Yeah,
do you use households or entities?
Well, we have entities, but we have relationships. So Agilon has it so you can get credit for each other's gifts and whatever the relationship is. So that's the way we use it.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. There's a question here about cloud-based versus on-premise. This would have just summarized the question. This comes up a lot because there's a lot of, obviously the technology sector, there's more and more stuff going to the cloud. Quite honestly, we as a vendor don't care. We can pull data from multiple locations and run in the cloud. We can run on-premise. As I said earlier, I think our software generally runs on-premise. We're pushing out to a group of people over the web. We just literally have a Windows web server app with you can put security on it, and people come in over tablets or browsers of any kind. I was running in a browser. It's fine. That thing can also be run in the cloud. We have a hosting environment at Amazon. If we do that, and the data is on-premise, we obviously have to move. So those things you just saw in my demos we call them projects. They're basically big files. So they're like big Excel workbooks. They might have 20 Agilon tables. I might have some spreadsheets loaded, and we just compress and save them. So it's one file that varies between, if it's small, could be 10 megs. If it's big, like some of our clients have 2 million entities and 20 million gift records or something, that could be a 400 meg file or something. But all we're doing is, we load the data wherever it is, and then we move the file to wherever we're running. If it's hosted in the cloud, we just have a secure push of the file up there, one file, and then it's up there and it runs from there, and we can manage administration, you can manage whatever. So that is, this hosted on-premise thing comes up all the time. It's sort of whatever's easier or cost-effective. We've got clients who want to push one of these things out to 30 people. Their IT group is totally jammed. There's no way they can get a web server in. You can't sneak one in because it's got like ports and security on it. So in that case, we could host it for 6 months or a year. We've got one of these right now, and now they're bringing it back on site. And basically the same project, it's just you run it on a local server versus pushing it to the cloud. So I think the one that's, I know just this week, they went from our hosted service to on-premise. It was a simple transition, and vice versa. If you get sick of running a web server, you can easily move it. So that issue comes up all the time, and especially in business intelligence, and it's like, I don't think it's a big issue. And I'd also add, our design point for authoring is a Windows laptop PC. Basically, to author the kinds of things I just showed, you need somebody with good Excel skills can do it. And it's wizard-driven, and we like the laptop PC because it's there, it's powerful. You just need connections to get to the data, and it's very similar to an Excel authoring environment, which end users are very comfortable with. So we've consciously chosen that for authoring, but then where it deploys from is, we're comfortable with basically whatever. Here's one for you, Dave. You like this one. We're evaluating a new CRM system. Why should we look at Agilon? And I didn't make it up.
Well, we are unique in the industry. We're a modern server web-based platform and have a good established client base and growing, and we scale very well. We're mobile friendly. We handle all of the top-tier sophisticated processes that the large fundraising groups demand, and we're easy to work with, just like ADVIZOR. Just to sum it up, be happy to give you a sales call or any other types of communications if you want to follow up after the webinar here.
Hey, Dave, I've got actually the question came in for ADVIZOR, but I'll flip it to you. It's how easy is it to get up? How easy is it to get up and running with Agilon? I'm assuming that means a port from another, CRM system.
Yeah, really the biggest unknowns are the type of data, how clean is your data, what do you want to do with your data in moving to a new system, and then of course any process changes that you may be looking to take advantage of. And those are unique by organization. We've brought organizations up in as little as 6 months, and we've gone well over a year with other organizations. So it's a client by client basis, and we adjust our implementations to meet their needs.
What's a typical time frame?
I guess if I had to pick one, it'd be right about a year is average, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say in our experience looking at that, that's pretty quick. We see a lot of projects that take a lot longer than that.
Yeah, we've heard some horror stories in the industries.
Yeah, because that obviously impacts us as well, because we're like not so useful if the data's all being torn up and twisted around. Although we do have some clients that have used us through transitions because it helps them understand what the actual content is in the database tables as they think about what needs to be kept, jettisoned, how to structure it.
We've re-implemented clients from everywhere from Blackbaud to Banner to Datatel, Genzabar, all of the major systems out there.
And the question originally came into ADVIZOR, how easy is it to get up and running with ADVIZOR? Usually our projects take probably a short cycle to get like that prospect ID project up is 4 weeks, and more likely it's probably 8, 12. It can go longer. Where it goes longer is we get into definition discussions, like how do we actually want to do giving, what constitutes a visit, and or where we have trouble with review cycles scheduling. But we're pretty much a month to a quarter to get a first project up, and a lot of that work is getting the data in and blended, and some of those like numbers of volunteer committees the last 10 years, we have to actually synthesize the data and understand it first and see where the gaps are. Obviously sometimes we start down the path, numbers of volunteer committees in the last 10 years, and the data is really sparse. It's not being routinely collected, so we have to back off. So that's the kind of stuff that take us a little longer or could be a little more efficient, depends on the client. Got time for like another question. What do we have? I actually see we're right at the hour here. I'm going to just flip it around and say any final comments from you, Kay or Dave, and then I'll close us.
I'd like to just mention that I'd welcome anyone that wanted to talk offline, and I'm sure any of my colleagues would be willing to answer any questions for anyone also.
And I've got your contact information. I forgot to move to the last slide, which had our contact information. But yeah, there's Kay at the her email and phone number. Hey, Dave, anything from you?
Well, I'd just like to thank you and Kay and Kay's team. You guys are always wonderful to work with, and pleasure doing the webinar with you.
I just want to thank you. We've had really good attendance on this webinar, and people have hung out the whole hour. So thank you. And I think as Kay said, we all love this topic area, and we'd be eager to follow up and just email or call. You've got our contact information. This has been recorded, and we'll be pushing it out to all of you with a note where to find it with the slides within the week. So with that, thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you.